All right, everyone. So what I want to talk about is something that's been bothering me for everyone. First, I want to start off by saying thank God for waking us up this morning. If you're watching this video, you are truly blessed. Um, but I wanted to talk about how, because I see a lot on social media that I mostly see it amongst the males because they're the ones that's majority of the time paying for child support. But I see where guys complain about paying child support because they feel that child support should not take up at least 30% of their income or whatever numbers that they have. They said that the government is taken from them, and they feel that a child doesn't cost so much to raise. And you're going to see me look down a lot because I'm referring to my laptop because, like I said in previous videos, is that, of course, like and everybody else, I have an opinion and I like to voice my opinion, but at the same time, I like to support my opinion with, facts, with stuff that you could come back and read for yourself and see that this is not something that I just made up. This is something that research has been put into to prove that, it's accurate, it's a thing. And so there's 4 websites that I'm going to be referencing to. 3 of them are .com articles, and the 4th is a .edu article because I always want to have that one. But the first 3, the .coms, they do correlate with the .edu, so that's why it's like that. I made sure that I found one that, for those people who's very anal, well, that can't be factual because you got it from a .com article and not, so you got something to reference to. But what I want to talk about is how, like I said, people feel that a child doesn't cost a good portion of their income. And what I've come to realize is that a lot of people do not look at the big picture, because a lot of people say, well, I shouldn't have to pay, my baby mother's bills. And people don't realize that those bills that you claim, that you shouldn't have to help pay or whatever, those bills isn't necessarily just for the mother, it's for your child. People fail to leave out, housing, the cost of rent, the cost of utilities, the cost of transportation, the cost of health care, the cost of food, the cost of child care. All of that stuff plays a factor in the percentage that is decided on what comes out of your pay to, go towards your shared child. And a lot of people also don't realize that the cost of living in general for a 2-parent household is a lot. And if you're paying child support, it's more than likely because you are not with your child's mother or father. And so that person that has full, physical custody of your child, that person is considered a single parent. And everyone knows, or I won't say everyone knows, but everyone should have realized by now that the U.S., the society has been set to mostly benefit married couples, where if you file taxes, do you realize you as a single individual, you pay more towards taxes than someone who files married? You see what I'm saying? It's not fair, of course, but that's the way society is set up. And so in this article called The Living Wage Calculator, also the subtitle is called New Data Calculating the Living Wage for U.S. States, Counties, and Metro Areas. It even stated that the living wage in the United States is $15.12 per hour. And this was done in 2015. And this is before taxes, and it coincides with a family of 4, so 2 working adults and 2 children. As people know who live off of minimum wage. Minimum wage isn't enough. And it even says in this article, minimum wage does not provide a living wage for most American families. It said a typical family of 4, 2 working adults, 2 children, needs to work nearly 4 full-time minimum wage jobs, which is a 76-hour work week per working adult, to earn a living wage. Now, it gets different for single parents. It says a single parent family needs to work almost twice as hard as families with 2 working adults to earn the living wage. It says a single mother with 2 children earning the federal minimum wage of $7.25 per hour needs to work 139 hours per week, which is more hours than there are in a 5-day week period to earn a living wage. It goes to say that for 2 adult, 2 children families, the minimum wage covers 64.3% of the living wage at best. And this is referring to South Dakota. And then it says, and 40.5% at worst in Hawaii. So this means that families earning between the poverty threshold, which is $24,440 for 2 working adults, 2 children on average in 2015, in the living wage, which is $62,882 on average for 2 working adults and 2 children per year before taxes, may fall short of income and assistance they require to meet their basic needs. So that means that a single family, a single parent household may fall short of the income and assistance they require to meet their basic needs because minimum wage isn't enough. Now, everyone, like some people don't pay attention to it. Some people just oblivious to it. Because there's people who don't have kids and there's people who just, don't pay attention to the stuff that doesn't pertain to them. But me personally, because, I'm a college student, I look at a lot of things, and especially as a criminal justice major, psych minor, I've looked at different social and economic backgrounds, and we studied it, and the inequalities and the differences between the different social and economic backgrounds. So I'm a little bit more versed with it, but it says that 20.8% of our of our paycheck, of what we earn in a year, 28% of it is for housing, 20.5 goes into child care, 19.7 goes into transportation, 17.8% goes towards food, 11 goes towards health, and then 10.2% goes towards other expenses of your living wage. And so I feel like when people make these drastic statements stating that it doesn't cost, this amount of money, it doesn't cost so much to raise a kid, it's like, you got to think, you may not want to or feel like you should pay for your baby moms or baby dad, whatever pertains to you. You may feel that you don't have to or should have to pay their bills, but your child lives under their care. They have physical custody of your child. You see what I'm saying? So if the money that you gave your kid was just to go into what you say it should go into, so if it's clothing and just food, then you'll have a clothed and fed child, but 9 times out of 10, they'll be homeless, without running water, no electricity because they're homeless, you know what I'm saying? There's so many factors that plays a role into what's decided on what percentage of your pay goes towards child support. You know what I'm saying? And me personally, this is opinion. If you don't want to pay child support, don't have kids. It's just that simple. I know, things happen. People get married and a relationship falls apart, and now you have a child, the relationship, fell apart. Now you're stuck with pain. But it still applies because there's plenty of married couples out here who's not having kids because they realize that being a single individual in the United States is hard enough. That's why you see a lot of people that has full-fledged jobs. They're grown. Like, I even have cousins that's 30 years old, 30 plus. You know, they have decent jobs, but they still live with their parents. You know what I'm saying? Because the cost of living is so expensive, even for a single individual. And it gets even worse when you have kids. And so I feel like, in my opinion, just birth control, you know, don't have kids because it's costly. Once a child is brought in, you just made the situation 2 times as harder as it was when it was just you, or it was just you and your spouse. You see what I'm saying? And people fail to realize that, especially in single family household or single parent households, you got that one parent that is taking on all these expenses by themselves: childcare, transportation, food, paying the bills, you know, rent, utilities, and all that stuff. And they're doing that all by themselves on top of raising a child. So of course the government is going to say, well, let's take all these numbers, add them, you know, do the math, and this is what you're left with. Because a single person can't raise a kid by themselves. If you can barely take care of yourself, you know, in the society, people think that don't believe the hype. I would say that, don't believe the hype, because you got people out here working jobs and their yearly salary is under 50K. To be honest, if your yearly salary is under 50K, you're struggling. You know, if you got people who are making, you got families who make $50,000 a year and still are struggling, because not only do you have all those bills, but God forbid you have debt, motherfucking student loans, you know, car loans, you have credit cards, debts. That's just more money coming out of your pockets, you know what I'm saying? So if you're making under $50,000 a year, it is going to be a struggle. And even a combined salary to make $50,000 between 2 people is difficult. Like, there's in this website where it talks about how, you know, housing costs, and it narrows it down, or it puts it by like the topmost, what is it, the topmost, like this one, the 15 largest U.S. cities, and it shows like how much, you know, the total cost of living is for a person. So like, we'll find a random city. Okay, so it landed at motherfucking New York. So New York City. The housing cost in New York City, not New York State, New York City, is $1,514 per month. So in a year, you're spending $18,168 just in rent. The total cost of living is $4,277 per month. You add that together, that's $51,323 a year. Now, I don't know about you, but that's somebody's yearly salary right there. Their total cost of living is $51,000. If you're not making at least, you know, 20 to 30%, you know, like at least 2 times that, you're not living comfortably. And then, like I said before, God forbid you have, you know, debt, kids, it gets even worse. Let's go to another place. They have Columbus, Ohio. Columbus, Ohio, housing cost is $601 per month, which is about $7,212 per year. The total cost of living is $2,719 per month, which comes out to be $32,632 per year. You see what I'm saying? Like, the cost of living, when you take into consideration of all the bills that needs to be paid, like everything, because bills takes up a good portion of everybody's paycheck. That's why everybody complain every 2 weeks. You know what I'm saying? It seems like you ain't never done paying bills. You pay one bill, a couple of days later you end up paying another one. You know what I'm saying? People need to take into consideration these numbers. You know what I'm saying? These are people yearly salaries right here, $32,000 for freaking San Antonio, Texas. The cost of living is $32,587, which is more than what most people are making on their job. Now, say for instance, the people that, which is majority of the people that you look at the working class, which is larger than the middle class, which is even larger than, you know, the 10%, you know, the very rich people. Majority of people are working minimum wage. You know what I'm saying? So if you take into consideration the average working, you know, hours that you work in a week, multiply that with your, you know, the minimum wage that you make, you get your yearly salary. A lot of people, especially like where I'm from in Rochester, New York, majority of our, which is, might I add, one of the most poverty-stricken cities in America, but majority people, cost of living exceeds their yearly salary. I know people who my mom is one of them. I grew up in a family of 8, 2 parents and 6 children. I am one of 6 that was raised in my house, one of 7, but he lives with his mom down south. And my mom, when she was working, well, she still is, but majority of her time, like when I was younger, she has a better paying job now, but when I was younger, my mom was working at places like McDonald's, Toys R Us, you know, like stuff like that. And she was making like less than $9 an hour. And her salary, her yearly salary was under $20,000. But if you add up her living wages, including all 8 people in that house, that exceeded what she was actually making. You know what I'm saying? And if it wasn't for my dad, who is on disability and was on disability, you know, if it wasn't for his, you know, contributions and what he did because they're married, like, I mean, we struggled. Don't get me wrong, we struggled, but the struggle would have been worse if my mom was stuck raising those kids by herself. You know what I'm saying? And people don't take into consideration that, you know, people go around having sex with people, filling them up with babies, and then they're just like, you know, I don't want nothing to do with, you know, none of the response. I'll give you a few dollars, you know, to clothe my child, feed him and stuff, but that's as far as it goes. Can't nobody live off that. Nobody can live off that. And as time goes on, that was in the 90s. This is 2018. The cost of living costs way more now than it did when I was a kid. You know what I'm saying? But people don't take that into consideration. You know what I'm saying? Single parent households, I'm telling you, it's a struggle. Because it was a struggle with mine, and we had 2 parents in the household. No, we didn't have 2 working parents. My dad was on disability. I had 1 working parent, but it almost felt like, you know, equivalent to a single parent household because my mom was the only one working, and my dad got, you know, he received 1 paycheck a month. You know what I'm saying? And this is it. Like, it bothers me because it's like, how can people not see it, you know, like the struggle? Because I know, you know, prior to me getting married, me working, you know, in the military, yeah, we had everything handed to us. We had barracks and stuff. So military, we had it a little easier because if you weren't married, you were, you know, you had your pay deducted and you were sheltered in the barracks. You can go to what they call a chow hall, which is like a, you know, cafeteria. You go there and eat. All this money was deducted. You never seen it, but you kind of were like taken care of. But as soon as I got out the military, came back home. My wife and I was married, but neither one of us had a job. We had to come back and live with my parents for the first couple of months till we got to a position where we can get out on our own. And even when, my wife got a job, I got a job, we had everything set up with disability in school and stuff, it was still a struggle because people fail to realize, like, okay, even as military, you can apply for benefits and that thing can take anywhere from a year plus for it to finally go through. And then you have to take into consideration that people have disabilities that it's added together, it's pretty high. I'll put it that. It deserves a high rating. But you got the VA that, sometimes, well, a lot of times, they give you low percentages. You know what I'm saying? They give you 40% and your whole body's falling apart. You constantly in, physical therapy, you need all these surgeries and stuff, and you got this low percentage and you barely getting $600 a month, and you still gotta live, you know what I'm saying? And it's just like, people are too selfish to realize, to say, let me take a step back and look at the whole big picture. Because I don't have kids, and I can't sit here and say, like, I understand the struggle because I've never, had to raise kids as a single parent, never had to raise kids married, because at this time, I don't have kids. But I do know how hard it was for me to just live with just my spouse on our paychecks. That wasn't enough, you know what I'm saying? I am one of 6 kids that was raised in a family where my mom wasn't getting paid squat, It wasn't enough to take care of all her kids. And I know you got people out here that's like, well, if you can't take care of the kids, then don't make them. It's easier to say that than to live it, because the majority of the people who says that are people that comes from families where their parents have good paying jobs. You know what I'm saying? If you look at the big picture, poverty plays a toll on one's development. You know what I'm saying? Cognitive development. And majority of people that raise their kids in poverty, they were raised in poverty. It's a cycle of poverty, And so people don't realize, like, people with money, that makes $60,000, $100,000 a year, you don't see them people walking around with 4, 5, 6 kids. And why? Because they have the luxuries to do so. You know what I'm saying? When you're in poverty, you don't have much option. You know what I'm saying? You end up, poverty causes teenage pregnancy, which my mom is a product of. She had me at the age of 17, my brother before me at the age of 15. You know what I'm saying? My sister after me at 18. My mom she was a teenage mother. And it's because she was raised in poverty. You know what I'm saying? People they're so quick to judge because they don't understand the lifestyle, the struggle. But you shouldn't be so quick to judge somebody because you don't understand it. Don't try to put your opinion on something if you aren't trying to look back, take a step back and look and say, let me try to emphasize with this person. We don't need sympathy. We need your empathy. Try to put yourself in our shoes and see if you say that same thing. You know what I'm saying? And poverty doesn't just always pertain to one race either, because like I said, my mom was raised in poverty, and she was raised by her mother, who was a single mother, and her mother, God rest her soul, she was white. My maternal grandmother is full blood Irish. Her grandmother came fresh off the boat to America. You know what I'm saying? My grandma is 2nd generation born here. And she dealt with poverty. She raised her 3 kids by herself in poverty. And people don't realize that poverty has, it has a hold. It has a hold on you. And yes, you do have those exceptions that make it out of poverty, but how often are those exceptions? How often are those people that make it out of poverty? You know what I'm saying? There's so many things that holds a person down. You got, race, you got socioeconomic, you got education, you got people to this day, even in 2018, can't land a job because they lack education. But how are you going to get education if you can't afford education? Then you got jobs that don't want to hire you because you lack experience. How are you going to get experience if nobody's trying to hire you? You know what I'm saying? There's many, many big factors that people ignore. And before you try to press judgment, before you say this should be done like this should be, look at the whole picture, you know what I'm saying? And try to get a full understanding before you make a judgment. That's pretty much my whole point of this topic, For those that complain about, paying child support, before you judge and try to say, hey, I shouldn't be paying this, actually do some research and see how much the average cost of raising a child costs. How much it costs to raise a child. There's plenty of websites out here that you can go to. You can go to federal and state websites, and that will tell you that to raise a child, from birth to 18 years old, that it costs almost $200,000, which most people is working on less than $50,000, less than $40,000 yearly salaries. You know what I'm saying? People have a lot of stuff that hinders them, and so before you judge, try to get a full picture or a full understanding and look at the full picture. Peace.